Hey everybody, we're here at Red Rocks Racing Sportsbook for the Sports Betting Podcast Bookends. He's Jason, I'm Chucky, and we're going to dive right into it. I mean, Jay, this is a fun time of year. Not only do you have football and college football and hockey going on right now, baseball playoffs. It's just fun with all the sports going on.
Yeah, and it was a good week for the books last week. Obviously, the monster upset of the Browns shocking the 49ers, and then watching in the afternoon as the Jets pull the upset over the Eagles. Killer, losses for those of you in the survivor pool.
Giants almost did the same on Sunday night against the Bills.
But the vast majority of the games outside of those two big upsets went the public's way,
right.
And there was a lot of winning tickets on those other teams. And we had a massive parlay hit here at Red Rock with a guest that was able to cash a $250 10-team parlay card wager that won him $199,750. So congratulations to that guest. That's a really big ticket, and I'm sure he's.
Thank you, Mac Jones, for taking the safety as he had the Raiders minus 2.5 on that, and that was one of the games that really decided it. That was the one that was really, really close. So
he had
Mac Jones.
He had to sweat out. He had the Cowboys as the last bet on the ticket on Monday night, so he had to sweat that game out. But again, a monster parlay win for one of our local guests, and it plays on the app. So again, you can find those winners on the STN Sports app. Mobile parlay cards, half-point parlay card, 10-teamer, paying you $799 to 1.
Pretty sweet. He was definitely, I'm sure, smiling. As you said, definitely sweating a little bit on Monday night as that game kind of went back and forth. Chargers had a couple of TDs called back, some big penalties late in that game as well, but it did swing his way. All right, let's dive right into it. Let's start with college football, and we've got a monster college football game. Number 7, Penn State at number 4, Ohio State. Ohio State's about a 4-point favorite. Starting to see this number tick up just a bit. Some interesting trends here. Penn State 5-0 against the number in their last 5 games. They're 5-0 straight up in their last 5 games. Ohio State is 5-0 straight up in their last 5 games when playing Penn State, yet they're a 4.5-point favorite here.
Well, Ohio State has dominated this series. They've won 6 straight games. They've won 10 of the last 11. They haven't lost in Columbus since 2011 to Penn State. And on the Penn State side of things, obviously you talk about Penn State or Ohio State's dominance over Penn State. James Franklin is 1-8 in his career against the Ohio State Buckeyes. So I think that's why you're seeing that number to continue to tick up.
But Ohio they have been a cover machine this year so far.
Ohio State has had a bunch of injuries going into this game. Right. They're missing some receivers. We don't know if any of their running backs are going to be healthy. So that's been somewhat of a question as who is going to be playing in this game for Ohio State. Penn State has had a lot of success on the ground, not a lot of success through the air, and Ohio State has been absolutely fantastic. I think they have the number 4 ranked defense, passing defense in the country. Now, again, we've played some pretty soft Big Ten opponents, as Penn State has. These teams really haven't had to beat anybody. Ohio State had the big win over Notre Dame late. But outside of that, there's been some pretty soft opponents on both these teams' schedules. But again, Ohio State has absolutely dominated this series. And if Penn State's going to win this game, they're going to need a monster passing performance from Aller and a big running game. And again, their defense is going to have to step up and play a monster game.
Yeah, there was some early action on Penn State where you saw this number kind of dip industry-wide to around 3.5. Really in the last 12 to 14 hours, starting to creep up a little bit, and you're seeing some 4.5s out there. My guess is we'll probably be Nittany Lion fans when the game kicks. But Penn State's had some couple of late covers that really were good for the bettors and not good for us.
Yeah, you talk about that influence of a team that keeps covering games, and Penn State has fit that mold. Franklin has. We've watched a couple games where we're questionable on him scoring late, throwing fake kneel downs to cover. Against one team, they scored on their touchdowns on their last 4 possessions of the game to cover. So Penn State's been a covering machine for you. And again, you can't go wrong with taking that team that seems to know what the point spread is and wants to try and cover those games. But I think that you throw point spreads out the window when you look at this matchup and you just try and pick a winner. Can Penn State hang with them, play in Columbus, and is this their year that they can finally knock off the Buckeyes?
As you said, it's a very tough place to play. Now we've got number 17 Tennessee against number 11 Alabama. Bama's 8.5, total 41. A couple of trends here. Tennessee 7-1 straight up in their last 8 games. The total has gone under in 6 of Tennessee's last 7 road games, which this is, and Alabama is 5-0 straight up in their last 5 games when playing at home against Tennessee, but they're a little over a touchdown favorite here.
Yeah, and Alabama is definitely going to come into this game with a chip on your shoulder. If you remember, they lost to Tennessee last year.
One of the best games of the year.
52-49. Right. So I know that under trend that you just mentioned. Last year, that went out the window as a 52-49 winner. So Alabama's got a chip on their shoulder. I don't think Alabama had a good game last week. Really kind of dominated an Arkansas team that really struggles on offense, despite the fact that KJ Jefferson is a capable quarterback. And we know the stats that they put up. There's just something wrong with that Arkansas team. Alabama was able to get the job done. Tennessee, on the other hand, a small favorite over Texas A&M. Played a low-scoring game, a 20-13 game against Texas A&M, and a really, really big win for them at home in that situation. So coming off the big win over A&M, this becomes a tough bounce-back game to now have to travel down to Tuscaloosa.
Yep. Another game we're looking at on the college slate, you guys, is Duke and Florida State. Number 16, Duke. Number 4, Florida State. Florida State's 14, total's 49. Duke's been on a little bit of a roll, 7-1 straight up in their last 8 games. Duke total has gone over 4 of their last 5 road games, but the Riley Leonard factor here is, I think, why we see the number where it is.
Yeah, I'll start with Duke because you talked about Riley Leonard. You got to know what his situation is before you play this game. I think the young man that came in and threw for him last week, Henry Ballon. I'm probably getting his name wrong, but it's something like that. I think he was like 4 for 12 passing.
Right.
So Duke definitely, he wasn't comfortable in that situation. Maybe a week of practice, he can get a little bit better. But if you're going to play Duke, you've got to know the status of Riley Leonard. And this Florida State team, a big win over Syracuse last week, but it was like they were walking through the motions. They didn't have the energy. They didn't really. You saw the effort level watching Jordan Travis. They've got a special player in Keon Coleman from a receiving standpoint.
They're a potential playoff team now.
You look at this kid, and he's going to be a first-round pick. But I just felt like a win over Virginia Tech, the win over Syracuse. After they got that win over Clemson, they've been these big, heavy point spread favorites. And so sooner or later, Florida State's going to come back with one of those monster efforts at home. And maybe the fact that you've got a 16th ranked Duke team coming in gets those Florida State juices flowing again, and they play their best football. Because despite the fact that they've won, despite the fact that they're number 4 in the country and we're looking at them as a potential playoff team, I don't think that they've had very good football the last 2 weeks despite picking up wins.
Right. Agree with you. Another game we're going to look at now, big Pac-12 game. You've got number 14 Utah, number 18 USC. Trojans are 7-point favorite. Total is 56. Remember, these two teams played twice last year where Utah got the best of Southern Cal. They played in the Pac-12 championship game here. It was an unbelievable atmosphere. Just the crowd in the book, too, with jerseys of both teams and sweaters and the atmosphere in it. Big decisions for us. We needed Utah. They came through. Utah's 5-1 in their last 6 games. It's kind of an interesting couple of other interesting trends here. The total has gone over or under in 5 of Utah's last 6 games. The total has gone over in 14 of Southern Cal's last 15 games, and Southern Cal has gone over in 8 of their last 9 home games. So you have to expect scoring here. But another thing is Cameron Rising. What's his status? So he hasn't played all year. He keeps coming up questionable. Is he going to make an appearance at some point? But I think you're seeing the number at 7 because he probably isn't going to play.
Yeah, and I think you just have to dismiss the Cameron Rising playing football this year at this point in time. We bring it up every week. We talk about it when we're making the numbers on Utah every week. We're essentially circling their games every week, waiting for him to make an appearance, and I don't think it's going to happen. He's going to be drafted in the NFL draft, and at this point in time, where is
this
Utah
would be the game, though,
him?
because they were great games when he played last year against Southern Cal.
And this is a tough spot for USC. Obviously, the national championship implications of losing the game at Notre Dame last week. We saw Caleb Williams, who was our Heisman Trophy favorite, throw 3 interceptions in the first half, and now we've seen Michael Penix kind of take that leapfrog in the Heisman Trophy race to be the favorite. Caleb Williams got to redeem himself here. Coming back home, this is a game that they definitely have. It's a big number, 7, as Utah plays pretty solid defense and has a capable offense. But obviously, if they had Cameron Rising, they would really be in a much better situation from an offensive standpoint. But USC's got to do something on the defensive side of the football. We saw Notre Dame able to run the football.
But not just Notre Dame. I mean, Arizona State had success against them. Arizona. There's a lot of teams that have had success against that Southern Cal defense, and we talked about it. As good as their offense was, their Achilles heel was going to be their defense at some point. Really came back to haunt them last week.
Yeah, and that's why, again, we talked about it last week, why Notre Dame was favored over them, despite the fact that they were the 6-0 team and Notre Dame was sitting at 4-2. So USC's got something that they have to find on defense. I think the offense will be fine. I think Caleb Williams, despite the fact that he's playing this good Utah team, he will find some holes and some cracks in that Utah defense. But again, I think Utah, even without Cameron Rising, should be able to move the football on the USC defense.
And the last college football game we're going to talk about is you're running Rebels. It's hard to believe that we're talking about the 5-1 UNLV football team, but it's just like the Aces, the Knights, the Raiders. Anytime you have a team that's relevant in our own backyard, the bettors, you guys back them, and you've done really well against them this year. I think they've covered every week. I think they're 6-0 against the number. So you Rebel bettors have cashed, done well. Go out and watch them play. I mean, they're exciting football. They beat UNR last week. The Cannon is back home. A couple of interesting betting trends here. Total has gone over in 6 of Colorado State's last 7 games when playing on the road at Vegas. Vegas is 5-0 against the number in their last 5 games and 6-1 straight up in their last 7 games. So it's hard to believe we're actually talking about Rebel football like this, but Odom's done a tremendous job. The offense is electric. They score a lot of points, and you guys have been cashing 6 straight weeks on Rebel football.
Yeah, absolutely amazing. I think they actually got some votes to crack the top 25, which is incredible. Incredible to think, but UNLV's been playing fantastic. This Colorado State team, we saw them get some national publicity in the big game at Colorado 3 weeks ago where they went on the road, lost that game late, but then they flipped the losing game late last week as they were down 30-10 with about 5 minutes to go to the game and ended up beating Boise State 31-30 on a Hail Mary late in the game there. So Colorado State's got their vibe going. They've struggled a little bit on the road. So this will be an interesting game, but again, a big number for UNLV to cover. This game probably would have been somewhere around a pick or Colorado State favored early in the season. So this is a big year so far for the Rebels, and we'll see if they can keep this spread cover going.
Yeah, they're fun to watch, and again, you guys have cashed out on them and done really well. If you get a chance, go out and watch them play because offensively, they really are fun to watch. All right, now we're going to come back in our next segment, and it'll be all about pro football, maybe touch on a few fantasy trends as well, but we'll be right back in the Sports Betting Podcast, Bookends.
Guess what? It's football season, baby. And you know what that means. It's time to bet your buns off. And when it comes to sports betting, you better bet with the STN Sports app. I'm talking football, all the fights, men's and women's basketball, men's and women's soccer ball. We've got it all. And with our 14 convenient sign-up locations around town, it's no wonder they call me the Queen of Convenience. Because when I bet with STN, I feel like royalty. So what in the heck are you waiting for? Download the STN Sports app today and trust the local favorite.
Hey gang, we're back at Red Rocks Racing Sportsbook for the Sports Betting Podcast Bookends, and now it's all about, as Bert would love to say, throw out to Bert, big boys, pro football segment here on Bookends. Let's start with Thursday night football. Jags travel to the Saints. A little question mark about will Trevor Lawrence play or not. He did practice early this week. We've seen the number come down, which indicates we think he's going to play here. It's a Jags team that is good one week, maybe bad one week. The Saints are still looking to kind of find their offense, but this number has plummeted over the last 24 hours.
Well, really impressed with what the Jags did. They're 2 weeks in London. They get the back-to-back wins in London and the win over the Bills in London as about a 6-point underdogs. And then they come back after 2 weeks in London, elect to not take their bye week,
right,
and they get to play the Colts, and they really kind of beat the Colts up in that situation without Richardson, Minshew making the start for the Colts there. But the Jaguars dominated that game, and it really wasn't a Trevor Lawrence passing type game. It was Travis Etienne that was really able to run all over the Colts. So Lawrence is a question
mark. And Jacksonville's defense, Minshew did not have a good game.
Was played very, very well. Lawrence is a question mark here. Obviously, you got to check his status and see what's going on from that standpoint. Saints have been incredibly inconsistent, especially on the offensive side of the football. They were expected to bring in Derek Carr and be the Michael Thomas to Chris Olave show with Alvin Kamara out of the backfield, and that offense just isn't been consistent. We saw them play a good game, a dominating game in New England where they were actually absolutely able to destroy the Patriots, and then they go on the road to Houston last week and lose 20-13, and to muster only 13.
They really never got anything going in that game.
Muster only 13 points against the Houston Texans defense that leaves you wanting a little bit. Kind of leaves this number where it's at. But the Saints do return home where they play a little bit better. Return indoors, get off that grass. So, but a very tough game unless you know what's going on with the Trevor Lawrence situation. So make sure you follow that and figure out what's going on with Trevor Lawrence before you play that game.
When you look at this game and from the betting side of it, there are a couple of interesting trends here. So Jacksonville is 5-0 against the number in their last 5 road games. New Orleans is 5-0 against the number in their last 5 games when playing Jacksonville. The total has gone under in 5 of New Orleans' last 5 games. As you talked about, offensively, they really haven't been able to get anything kind of going offensively, which we thought they would with Carr coming over with Michael Thomas and Olave. It hasn't happened, but there are some betting trends here, and something has to give because they both had success, one on the road and one against the opponent.
Yeah, and I don't remember the numbers last week, but the unders were massive.
It was 3-10. So it actually would have been, I believe, 3-12 now. Overall, would have been toward the under.
Look at the totals this week. There are a number of games that are hovering around the 40 to 42.
Isn't this supposed to be an offensive league?
Yeah, there's 3 games that are with totals underneath that 40 mark. So scoring is down in the NFL, and we see teams that they look offensively challenged. There's at least 6 or 7 teams that you just wonder how they're going to score points. And we talk about it being a quarterback-driven league, and we have this, we'll call it this argument all the time of that the NFL is such a quarterback-driven league, and you have to have quarterbacks that can be mobile and lead your offense to success. And I constantly making the argument that I don't believe it's a quarterback-driven league. I believe it's an offensive line-driven league in the fact that we know that Joe Burrow is a good quarterback. But when Joe Burrow can't be protected by that Cincinnati Bengal offensive line, they don't win games and he can't put up stats. And so when we look at all of these teams throughout the league, if your quarterback faces pressure all game long and he's constantly got that pressure in his face, he's getting sacked, you're not going to have success. And we have too much of that in today's game where we're just seeing defensive lines dominate offensive lines. They're able to get to the quarterback, and I think that's why we're seeing scoring down, is that we just have the defensive front is overwhelming these offensive fronts.
It's just surprising because we know that there's so many rule changes have been instituted to kind of get scoring up, the pass interference calls, and it just hasn't happened so far this year. A few teams, I mean, we talked, the Dolphins put 70 points on the board, which you haven't seen since 1916, so it's crazy.
Well, go look at the 2 monster upsets last week. The Cleveland Browns with P.J. Walker, we'll say an offensively challenged quarterback.
Yep.
Okay. The New York Jets with Zach Wilson, an offensively challenged quarterback. However, both of those teams have what?
Defense.
They have great defensive lines.
Right.
And the Browns defense was able to neutralize what the San Francisco Giants offered. Now again, or San Francisco 49ers, they lost Deebo Samuel in that game. Christian McCaffrey got banged up at that game. But again, that's because those Browns defense is a big physical unit that was able to put some punishment on them and wasn't able to let Purdy beat them. And then the Jets did the same thing in the afternoon game. They were able to control Jalen Hurts. They were able to get to the football and defense without Sauce Gardner.
Right.
So think about how good that defense played to control the Eagles. And they didn't have what we would say
Hurts
is their best player.
You shouldn't have been throwing at the end of that game to begin with. But there's a lot of questionable calls we can get into. It's easy to play Monday morning quarterback, but kind of surprising that he was throwing late.
But again, those defenses, check out those defenses because they, despite the fact of not having that sexy offense, those sexy quarterbacks, these defenses are what's winning teams football games right now.
All right, now we're gonna jump to some of these Sunday games, and this game for me is one of the best games on the board. It's the Detroit Lions at Baltimore, and AFC North against NFC North, the 2 teams that are in first place in both divisions. I know we've kind of made fun on bookends at the start of the season. It's the Lions. They're expected to win the North this year, but they're really good. I think after the Eagles and 49ers in the NFC, I can make a case that the Lions are the 3rd best team. Cowboys have struggled a little bit over the last month. I really think this Lions team is good. They do have a lot of injuries. Gibbs and Montgomery are injured at running back, but they just are a good team. They're coached really well. Campbell's kind of a throwback a little bit. They play well on defense. Jared Goff has played great now for a year plus. I think this Lions team, for me, is the 3rd best team in the NFC, and they're getting a couple points here against the Ravens.
I'll still take Dallas above Detroit in the NFC, and I think that this is the measuring stick game for the Detroit Lions. Right. I'm not going to say that I'm leapfrogging them with a big win over Tampa last week in a game that Baker Mayfield, a couple Mike Evans dropped balls, but again, they didn't look like they had a good offense. This Ravens team, the only thing in this game that is a little bit concerning for me for the Ravens is that they played in London last week. So you get to travel to London, have to come back home, but again...
They don't score, though. Yeah, they're another team that seems to be offensively challenged with all the moves they made to help Lamar Jackson in the offseason.
Yep, and it has to be the Lamar Jackson show. we don't really even know who their running back is on a week-to-week basis or what they're going to do since J.K. Dobbins is out. Mark Andrews is supposed to be that tight end weapon, and then you sprinkle in a Bateman and a Flowers and a Beckham. And so in the London game, we finally saw Beckham with some big plays. But again, I just think this is a big spot for Detroit to travel to Baltimore to know that they have a top-notch, top of the league NFC team coming in, and this is a measuring stick for both these two teams. So you said it right at the beginning that this is one of the best games of the week. This is one that I have circled, and I think that everyone should have this circled as an evaluation of where are the Ravens going and where are the Lions going, because the winner of this game really can separate themselves as a leader in the NFC or a leader in the AFC, and something to look for.
I think it speaks volumes of how good Detroit is because of these two stats. Detroit is 7-1 against the number in their last 8 games on the road, and they're also 7-1 straight up in their last 8 games on the road. So to me, a measuring stick of how good a team is in pro football is not how dominant you are at home, but it's how dominant you are on the road. They're just not winning on the road, they're covering on the road as well. So they've been a dominant team now for over a year, and that's really an interesting stat. And getting back to the Ravens' offensive struggles and not being able to score, Ravens have gone under 5 straight home games with Lamar Jackson against a high-powered offense like Detroit. We'll see if something gives them this
and I think that lends back to their defense. That Ravens defense has been better than they've been in years past. And one of the things to really look at in this game, we talked about the Ravens returning from London, but Detroit is going to be absent of probably both their top 2 running backs.
Right.
Montgomery and Gibbs both probably out of this game. You're going to be leaning on Craig Reynolds from an offensive running game standpoint. Now, again, that offensive line for the Lions has been absolutely fantastic, so maybe Reynolds have some success, but the Ravens stout, the best part of their defense is that running game defense. So this could be a Goff passing type game where he needs to find Laporta and Reynolds and
Williams
St. Brown's
back next week, which really helped a lot. He had I think a 45-yard touchdown.
So again, low total. I think that these teams can play some stand-up defense and obviously run the clock with Lamar Jackson trying to ball control. But again, this is the circle of the game. This is the game of the morning, the 10 o'clock game that I think you're going to want to watch.
So AFC West battle, Chargers at the Chiefs. Chiefs are less than a touchdown favorite here. Both offenses were expected to be high-power, high-octane offenses. We really haven't seen that much of it. I know in the Chargers case, they lose Mike Williams for the year. Eckler was out for a number of weeks. He's back now. They've really struggled a little bit offensively too, but this Chief team is one kind of ugly. They're winning more with defense than they are with offense. Here's a couple of betting trends or stats here as well. Chargers, 5-1 against the number in their last 6 games when playing the Chiefs, which bodes well if you want to take points here. The Chargers are also 4-1 against the number in their last 5 games when playing Kansas City on the road. So a couple of kind of trends that favor the Chargers here, getting that 5.5 or so points.
Yeah, for those of you that have the Kelsey Mahomes fantasy combo like somebody else does, and they're both putting up, poorer statistical seasons than they have since they were essentially rookies in their first year in the league, and they haven't been clicking. Despite the fact that the Chiefs have been winning these games, they're not doing it with 400 and 500-yard passing games from Mahomes.
But Kelsey's always open.
Yep.
It's the wideouts, though. Who's going to emerge as that guy?
He's thrown some more interceptions than what we're used to seeing from Patrick Mahomes. They're running the ball a little bit more with Isaiah Pacheco. But you talked about it, the Kansas City defense has been really, really good and kind of a stand-up unit.
Right.
And on the flip side, when we look at the Chargers, their defensive front has been absolutely fantastic. I think they're like 21 or 22 sacks now in the past 4 games, and Mack has been absolutely fantastic in the last several games. I think he had 5 sacks in the Raiders game alone. So they're being able to do things standing up. We saw them able to stop that Dallas offense last week, and what the Chiefs is doing. This is Kellen Moore, in his first year with the Chargers, so maybe it's just taking some time for all those Charger weapons to get things going. We saw them have a great opening week against Miami, and then you said missing Eckler to kind of
But Williams,
fall back.
Williams had a huge game in his last game, the game he got hurt in. I think he had a touchdown and 145 yards receiving in a little over a half against the Vikings.
Yeah, we saw Keenan Allen have an 18 reception game
Right.
that week as well, or the next week as well. So they've got the weapons to do it, and this is a divisional game, and these teams historically play some pretty close games that come down to the end. But again, the Chiefs are coming off the extra rest from playing on Thursday against the Broncos, so they get extra rest, while the Chargers played on Monday night and they get the short week. So the schedule makers did a favor here for the Chiefs in this situation, and then I think that is kind of why you see that number kind of around that touchdown.
And not only did the Chargers have the short week, but it was against the Cowboys defense. So it was against a physical defense, yet the betting trend still shows that taking the points in this one with the Chargers on the road has been successful of late. Another game we're going to look at now, AFC against NFC. Steelers at the Rams. Looks like Pittsburgh will get Freiermuth and Deontay Johnson back in this one. Rams are a 3-point favorite. A couple of trends here. Pittsburgh 5-1 against the number in their last 6 games when playing the Rams. Pittsburgh 5-1 straight up in their last 6 games when playing the Rams. Rams are 5-0 against the number in their last 6 home games and 5-1 against the number in their last 7 games. So something definitely has to give here. It looks like there'll be no Williams at running back for the Rams. It's next man up. It might be Evans in this case. They're a very small favorite. They might not be able to run the ball against Pittsburgh anyway, but now I think with Cutback and Nakua and Tutu Atwell, he's going to have to open it up even more and throw a lot more against his Pittsburgh defense.
Yeah, and we'll start with Pittsburgh off the bye week. So they were injured kind of last 2 weeks before their bye week with several other guys hurt. Quarterback hurt, Freiermuth hurt. We haven't really seen anything out of the running game from Harris, and we were supposed to see a lot more of Jalen Warren this year, catching the ball out of the backfield and him even contributing to the running game, and we just haven't seen it. The Steelers haven't been able to win games with the offensive ball. They stole a couple games with some defensive turnovers.
That's how they always do it, though.
And that standpoint, they now go up against this Rams team that we really saw struggle last week against the Cardinals for the first half of that game. I think they only had about 6-yard rushing in the first half, and essentially what was almost a tie game at halftime, and then they just completely exploited the Cardinals defense in the second half. Kyron Williams ran wild. I think he ran for 146 yards in the second half and then got hurt. So they'll be without him in this game. You may mention that Evans will be the guy, and we really saw the first game of the season where Puka Nakua wasn't kind of a dominant figure in the passing game. Cooper Kupp was absolutely fantastic. They bottled up Nakua. Tutu Atwell had a big game. But Stafford has the ability to kind of exploit these secondaries, find these holes, and that's what we'll be looking for in this game, is can this Steelers secondary cover Kupp, cover Nakua, because I think that's, again, where the Rams are going to look to exploit with the fact that they're not going to have that running game.
Well, I think when you look at the Steelers' offense, too, getting Freiermuth and getting Deontay Johnson back really opens things up for Warren and the running game somewhat, and then Harris, and it really helps Pickens at wideout, too, because now you can kind of have that supporting team around you, where before it really was only Pickens.
Yeah, and you're gonna have to hope, if you're a Steeler fan or putting your money on the Steelers, you're gonna have to hope they find it in the passing game, because I don't think that Rams rushing defense is going to allow a lot of success to whether it's Harris or Warren in the running game.
All right, now we're going to talk about our Las Vegas Raiders. They travel. They come off a big win last week. They travel to Chicago to play the Bears. Not that the Raiders are kind of back in the wild card discussion now. Bears really struggling at 1-5. This looks like it's going to be the battle of backup quarterbacks. Hoyer did a good job last week. It looks like Tyson Bagent for the Bears here. He went to Shepherd College, undrafted free agent, came in last week when Fields got hurt, played okay. He was the equivalent of the Heisman winner for D2 2 years ago. He's taken all first-team reps. It looks more and more like he's going to get the start. A couple of interesting trends here. The Bears are 4-0 against the number in the last 5 games when playing at home against Vegas. And the Bears have gone under in 5 of their last 6 games this year. The only time that it was under was that game against Minnesota. But this is a Bears team that gives up a lot of points. They have trouble on defense. You've got a young quarterback going. The Raiders are a 3-point favorite. I really think once you know for sure it's going to be Bagent, this number is going to skyrocket.
Did you say the Bears are 4-0 at home?
They are 4-1 against the spread in the last 5 games when playing at home against the Raiders.
Does that go back to like 1972?
I think actually, I think Papa Bear was the coach of the Bears then, and I'm not sure the quarterback was, but it was a long time ago.
You talked about the backup quarterback situation. Tough to really evaluate this game on looking at Bagent from a standpoint of the Bears offense. Justin Fields has been so much of that offense and what they want to accomplish in both, obviously, the passing game and the running game, to now make a quarterback switch to a relative unknown who I think he turned the ball over on his second play of the game as he came in. So a little bit of the nervous energy. Obviously, hopefully the week of practice gets him better. But again, we saw this Bears team look atrocious for several weeks then they surprise us on a Thursday night game and they go into Washington and they're able to come out with a big win in Washington, and you get some maybe warm, fuzzy feelings that this Bears offense is finding things, and they're a short price against the Vikings, and again, they just lay another egg, and the Minnesota Vikings come into Chicago
without Jefferson,
and just absolutely dominate them. So now the Bears are back to, looking like the Bears that we expected to see the first couple weeks, talking again about them having a first and second round draft pick with the Carolina Panthers continuing to lose and them owning that
first
pick.
and second pick.
So I don't know how you can have faith in looking at this quarterback. The Raiders, on the other hand, have seemed to turn their season around, and they're really doing it on the defensive side of the football. Max Crosby's been absolutely fantastic. Not what we expect from the Raiders team when we talk about a Raiders defense that's the better unit on the field at this point in time, holding these opponents down and giving the Raiders a chance to win games. And last week, essentially a small miracle to be able to get the situation, put the Patriots in, that they're able to hold them, punt, get them deep in the zone. Patriots commit a couple penalties, get the safety on Mac Jones late in the game to then get the cover for the Raiders. But again, they're putting themselves in a situation to win football games. And again, this week, it should be another scenario where the Raiders are in a situation against an undermanned Bears team. And again, it's not only the quarterback situation; they have running back issues. They've got health issues.
They've got
health
a
issues
lot of
all
injuries.
over the field for the Bears team. So again, you talking about the Raiders from a wild card standpoint, but that's not a joke anymore. This Raiders team is winning football games, and there's a path where they're playing teams that they can beat. You've got a Bronco team that's going to be beatable, and this is a winnable game for the Raiders.
It's a week the Chargers could lose to the Chiefs, and they're right back in it. So we're going to segue from a game that has two teams with backup quarterbacks to the marquee game of the week, a game that could be a Super Bowl preview. Alabama quarterback against Alabama quarterback. Tua against Hurts. Phenomenal game on Sunday night. The Eagles are a very small favorite here. Just really some quick betting trends here. Miami is 8-1 against the number in their last 9 games and 5-1 straight up in their last 6 games. So they've been betting darlings for you guys as well, really backing them a lot. The Eagles come off this loss. They still haven't looked like the same Eagle team to me as they were last year. I think Hurts has more interceptions this year than he had all of last year. But it's a phenomenal game with these two teams and both high-powered offenses. And I know we've talked about last week, it was 3-12 toward the under. This is a game that I think you're going to see a lot of scoring on Sunday night.
Yeah, I think you've got this one circled as one of the games that can go over in a heartbeat, especially with the way this Miami Dolphins team attacks teams down the field with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. They take their shots with Hill constantly. You know that McDaniel's going to have some wrinkles in the offense this week, some crazy plays to surprise this Eagle team. We have seen this situation for the Dolphins before, though, where they put up the monster number in a 70-20 win over Denver at home, and then traveled to Buffalo, and the Buffalo Bills kind of put a hurting on them. This past week, we watched the Carolina Panthers jump out to a 14-0 lead against the Dolphins, and then the Dolphins storm back with 35 points or even 42 points, and even get the cover 14 points after being down 14 points in a game. So essentially a 28-point margin that they had to make up, and they were able to do it in a heartbeat. And you're able to do that when you have the special players like the ones we're talking about. But now, again, big win over Denver, travel to Buffalo and take a loss. Big win over the Panthers. Now have to travel to the Eagles, who are going to be a little bit ticked off with their loss to the Jets last week and ruining their perfect season. Some of the things that the Eagles do best, with obviously that ground control, the swift, the Hurts, running the ball, kind of fits the perfect mold of what you want to do to this Miami Dolphins team in keeping their offense off the field, controlling the clock, running those 13, 14, 15-play drives. So the Eagles have that perfect mix of what they want to do is what's best to beat that Miami Dolphins, and that's run the football, control the clock, and keep the Dolphins off the field. So that may, as much as we talk about lighting up the scoreboard, the game pace for the Eagles might be wanting to slow this game down to lead it more to that under type betting atmosphere.
I'm still going over in this one, guys. I think a lot of scoring.
We'll say from a fantasy standpoint, I don't know how you turn off any of your Eagles or Dolphins players. Obviously, the Dolphins, between Mostert and Waddle and Hill, those guys are absolutely must-starts every week. Devonta Smith has somewhat disappeared from the Eagles' offense the last couple of weeks. On the flip side, A.J. Brown, I think he's got 4 games in a row now with over 125 yards receiving, and obviously Swift has been absolutely a fantastic part of that offense. And we could see a Gainwell sprinkled in, as we've seen him a little bit more on the field here lately as well. But again, I think this is a great matchup, but I do think that you're going to see that Eagle team really focus on the running game.
I think when you talk about don't turn off your fantasy guys, we can touch on it as well. I'm going to go back to that Charger-Chief game. I think that game's going to be a wide open scoring game as well. We just talked about the Eagles coming off a loss playing Sunday night. The Niners coming off a loss playing Monday night. Niners against Minnesota Vikings in Minnesota. Minnesota, no Jefferson here. Niners have a number of guys banged up. It was Deebo Samuel, McCaffrey, Trent Williams. All those guys are kind of up in the air right now on their status. A couple of quick betting trends here. Vikings are 5-0 straight up in their last 5 games when playing at home against the Niners, and Minnesota is 9-1 against the number in their last 10 games when playing at home against San Francisco. So they've had a lot of success in Minnesota, in the Dome, when hosting the Niners.
Yeah, and again, you got to check the status to find out what's going on with those Niners players. Obviously, Christian McCaffrey is a potential MVP, scored touchdowns in 14 straight games. And so if they're going to be without him, that's a big difference in the offense. We saw Mason come in and score a touchdown last week after McCaffrey went out. I'm not sure that Elijah Mitchell, who had missed
that
some
was his
time,
first game back last week. He only had a few carries.
So I'm not sure Elijah Mitchell doesn't leapfrog back to the number 1 receiver, and we'll see Mason step in as number 2. When McCaffrey has been hurt, they do lean on Deebo Samuel to be a little bit more of that rushing offense. However, he got banged up last week. So maybe it's a Kittle Ayuk more type of game, and we see Brock Purdy have that bounce back game against his Viking defense, is a little bit susceptible in the defensive secondary. But again, the big story for the Minnesota Vikings is no Justin Jefferson, and when you're going up against this Niners defense, you're going to have to score points. Minnesota Vikings do not have the Cleveland Browns defense, so the Niners are going to be able to find some holes, and Minnesota's going to have to find those holes on the return. And so Hawkinson and Addison and Kirk Cousins, Minnesota's biggest problem this season so far has been the turnover machine. They've had a ton of interceptions, a ton of fumbles, and a lot of those have come really early in games. If they're able to not turn the football over, maybe there's a chance to stay in this game.
I could see some scoring in this game, too. Before I let you guys go, a couple of other things we want to touch on. First, last man standing. Pro football, it's down to 122 left. College football down to 57 guests left. We've got postseason baseball going on right now. Both the Phillies and Rangers really dominant. And you think about these 4 teams that are playing in the NL and ALCS, Jay. Phillies, the best price you could have got them this year, 40-1. D-backs, best price you could have got them, 90-1. Rangers, best price you could have got them, 60-1. Astros, a little bit lower at 10-1. But there was some juicy prices on these 4 teams as well.
Well, and I think that was due to the dominance of the Braves throughout the season. So it gave all these teams a little bit higher odds. And the Phillies have been absolutely fantastic this second half of the season. Really struggled the first half with Harper and Turner not able to find their mold. Nick Castellanos has really carried this team. And now we just see all of these guys as we've hit October, and it seems like their home run swings are in full effect as Schwarber's been, he's not only hitting homers, he's hitting absolute bombs, 117 miles off the bat. Turner, we've seen Harper, Castellanos, they've been absolutely fantastic. And really, Nola and Wheeler, and we're going to see Suarez in this game 3, they've all been fantastic on the mound. And really, you look at the other side of the teams that are winning, the Rangers are kind of doing it somewhat in the same fashion. Montgomery and Evaldi have been absolutely fantastic. They're having success.
It's the road, though.
Yeah.
They were the worst road team of all the teams in the postseason. They've been dominant on the road, and they had a lot of success during the regular season at home. Now they're going back home.
Yeah, and they get those bats back. Jung-Woo's been out for a bunch of the season. Jonah Heim's been good in hitting the baseball, but their pitching has been absolutely fantastic. Montgomery, Evaldi's been great, and really the Achilles heel of the Texas Rangers kind of throughout the regular season was their bullpen.
Right.
And Leclerc and Chapman and Spores, they've kind of found a way to mix and match to be able to win these games. And so I think the baseball is going to come down to it. I'm not writing off the Houston Astros. I think we've all made that mistake in the past. Yordan Alvarez, Bregman, Altuve, these guys find a way. Maybe they'll buy some new garbage cans to bang on,
Wow.
or something like that. But I'm not writing off
saying
Houston.
anything.
Not writing off Houston yet. I think the D-backs are. I think the D-backs were dead in the water before this this series even started. I think the Phillies are on fire. I won't be surprised at all if to watch them sweep. But I do think we're potentially headed for that Phillies-Rangers World Series, which again, not that marquee big city teams.
But they're both playing so well,
yes,
and with the
pitching
swagger,
matchups,
yeah.
the pitching matchups are going to be good, and it should go to be a good series. But again, not writing off the Astros yet. And you talked about UNLV, 6-0 against the spread. I'd be remiss if we don't mention that the Golden Knights are now off to another 4-0 start
touch on that,
with
yeah.
4-1 wins, and then a monster win over the Dallas Stars last night, a 3-2 overtime win where they really were outplayed the vast majority of the game. Carlson gets the late to tie it up, and then we see Marshall Salt score the game
only
winner
good
in the
news
overtime.
last night, it didn't go over again. So 4-0 unders, but they didn't cover the puck line, which helped a little bit.
And they're gonna travel to our hometown to see Connor Bedard and the Blackhawks this week, and then I know they're back home next week on Tuesday against the Flyers in an odd 8:00 start time. So again,
TV.
The nighttime is in full effect, and the Knights are again much like we saw at the end of last season, and they're starting off again this year in. As our good friend Bird always calls the Knights, it's a like betting fan appreciation day, and it's the Knights are just a free winner for all of our guests.
One last thing too, it's the WNBA. Aces at this recording now trail 2-1 in their series. Chelsea Gray is banged up. We've seen a dramatic turn in the number there. It's really going to hurt their rotation a lot in this game. We'll see how it all kind of shakes out, but wouldn't surprise me to see them back here for a Game 5. But again, congratulations. Great season so far on the Aces. We'll see if they can close it out against the Liberty as well. Don't forget, guys, with all this going on that we talked about, get signed up for STN Sports. The mobile app, still up to that $500 bonus. We love when you guys come out, experience everything we have to offer, not only here at Red Rock, but all of our racing sports books. If there's long lines, check out the kiosks. They're great as well, but a lot of cool stuff going on. But get signed up for STN Sports. We're not that far away from the NBA and college hoops either.
Yeah, NBA tips off October 24th. Opening night with 2 games, and that bonus is only live till October 31st. So don't be the pumpkin on October 31st that expires and your Cinderella goes away. You can still get that $500 bonus up until October 31st.
All right, sounds great, guys. For Jason, I'm Chucky. We're here at Red Rocks Racing Sportsbook. We will see you guys next week on the Sports Betting Podcast in Bookend.